that could actually have some major implications for celebrity privacy. We're talking about Blake Lively, Gossip Girl, and A Simple Favor.
Right, right.
At her lawsuit against Justin Baldoni, he's known for Jane the Virgin. They were co-stars, and he was the director on this film, It Ends With Us. And
yeah, this case has some layers to it for sure.
it really does.
Yeah.
I mean, beyond even just the accusations, which are some serious allegations of sexual harassment and like a smear campaign, there's a whole legal battle brewing over how much information can actually be kept private during the discovery process.
Yeah, and that's actually the really interesting part of this. Lively is pushing for like a really, really tight confidentiality order. She wants all of the sensitive information to be kept, attorney's eyes only, basically.
It's like she's trying to like put this legal shield around the entire case, and I can kind of see why.
Oh, for sure.
Because high-profile cases like this always, they attract so much media attention. Like anything that's leaked, true or not, it can really damage reputations and careers.
Absolutely.
Even just being associated with a certain type of case.
Totally.
Can be enough.
Just the accusation can be enough.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what the truth of it is, it's out there and it's associated with you,
Lively's lawyers seem really, really worried about like publicists, specifically publicists with media connections. Like they're really concerned that information could get out there, whether intentionally or not. Like it could just become tabloid fodder. It really makes you wonder, is that a realistic worry or is that just some Hollywood paranoia?
I think it's definitely a valid concern. Standard protective orders are pretty common in legal cases, right?
Right.
They usually limit using the information that you get during discovery to the lawsuit itself. But Lively is asking for something way stricter. She wants to limit the access to the information only to the lawyers directly involved in the case. So no paralegals, no assistants, none of that. Just the lawyers.
So it's like we've got this legal standoff, right?
Yeah.
Lively wants maximum secrecy, while Baldoni's lawyer is pushing back and they're saying this request is excessive.
Right. They're basically saying, hey, we can handle this responsibly. There's no need to lock everything down. But Lively's team's not buying it.
No, they're not. And so, this is where it gets really interesting. The judge in the case seems to be taking these privacy concerns pretty seriously. He's acknowledging the huge risks of all this publicity, and he's saying that he's going to make a decision on this confidentiality order soon.
Okay.
What do you think? Will he side with Lively and go with this extreme secrecy, or will he stick with the standard legal procedures?
That's the million-dollar question. This judge's decision could completely change how future celebrity lawsuits are handled. Like, what happens here could change how much information is accessible in any legal battle involving like a high-profile person, even if the public might have a legitimate interest in knowing what's going on.
Right, and it feels like we're kind of getting at this question of the public's right to know versus the right to privacy. And that's the
core of it, right?
That's at the core of this.
That's a tension.
Especially in this age of social media and this 24/7 news cycle, it's a very difficult thing to balance.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because this isn't the first time that Lively has been pretty vocal about protecting her privacy. Do you remember a few years ago when she called out the paparazzi for harassing her and her kids?
Oh yeah, that'd be a whole thing.
It was huge. She even posted pictures of photographers hiding in the bushes outside her house and urged all the media outlets to not publish images that exploited children.
Right.
She's clearly been pretty consistent in her efforts to control the narrative and try to shield all that sensitive information from the public eye, especially when it comes to her family.
Which makes sense,
Yeah.
Like imagine being in the middle of some really messy legal battle and having every little detail splashed across all the tabloids.
Totally.
It would be a nightmare.
And it's important to remember that even if someone is proven innocent down the line, the damage to their reputation can be really, really difficult to repair. Public opinion can be swift and harsh, and once that information is out there, it's out there. You can't take it back.
So this case isn't just about Lively and Baldoni.
Right.
Like it has the potential to really set a precedent for how all celebrity lawsuits are handled in the future.
Right. If the judge sides with Lively, it could make it much harder for the public to access information in a lot of legal cases, even when there is a legitimate public interest in knowing what's going on.
Right.
It could embolden other celebrities to try to push for similar confidentiality orders, and it could really shroud these legal proceedings in a lot of secrecy. It's tricky, right?
Yeah.
On the one hand, we want to protect people from having their personal lives unfairly exposed, but then on the other hand, we need transparency in our legal system to make sure that there is accountability.
It's such a delicate balance to strike, and the judge is going to have to weigh those interests very carefully.
Yeah. Stepping back for a second, let's think bigger picture. This case brings up some really big questions about privacy in the digital age and how it's changing. What do you think about how all this might impact the way we think about these issues going forward?
That's a great question. This case highlights the challenges we face in trying to navigate those blurred lines between public and private life, especially when you bring in legal proceedings. And this isn't even just limited to celebrities. Think about how this could affect cases involving corporate misconduct or political figures.
Yeah.
It could be really far-reaching. So if this case does lead to these stricter confidentiality orders becoming more normal, could it actually become harder for journalists and watchdog groups to uncover wrongdoing and then hold those powerful individuals accountable?
It's definitely a possibility, and I think that's something we need to consider really carefully because transparency is so essential for a functioning democracy. And, if there is excessive secrecy, it can erode the public's trust in those institutions.
So what can we actually do to mitigate these risks? Are there ways to protect individual privacy but still not sacrifice transparency?
That's the question, right? It's complicated. There's no easy answer. One possible solution could be to establish clearer guidelines for when those confidentiality orders are actually appropriate and what level of restriction is really justified.
Right.
Perhaps like a tiered system could be implemented where there's varying levels of protection based on the circumstances of each case.
Interesting, and it seems like this also brings up the role of the media. Like, how can journalists report responsibly on these legal cases when there's this really sensitive information involved, but also respect individual privacy?
It's a really challenging task for sure. Journalists have this responsibility to inform the public, but then they also have this ethical obligation to protect individuals from unnecessary harm. And so it's about striking that balance.
And it feels like a balance that's becoming harder and harder to achieve in the current media landscape where information spreads so quickly and there's so much pressure to break news first.
Totally. The rise of social media and the 24/7 news cycle, it's really amplified these challenges.
So where do we go from here? This case has really sparked all these big conversations about privacy, transparency, and the role of both the legal system and the media.
Yeah, it really has. These conversations are crucial, and they're going to keep coming up as we try to grapple with these changing ideas of privacy in this digital age.
Well, we'll have to leave it there for now, but this is a conversation worth continuing for sure.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with something to think about. What if you were the judge in this case?
Wow.
How would you even begin to balance that need for transparency with the right to privacy? I mean, what factors would you even consider? It's a really tough call because there are very valid arguments on both sides.
Yeah, I think I'd have a really hard time with that decision. It's not even just about Lively and Baldoni. It's about setting a precedent that could really have lasting effects on the whole entertainment industry and beyond.
Exactly, and that's what makes this case so fascinating, right? It's not just some Hollywood drama. It's like this little microcosm of these big, societal debates that we're having about privacy and transparency and accountability in this digital world.
Well said. We will definitely be following this case closely as it all plays out, but for now, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, tell us what you think. How would you balance those competing interests? It's a really complicated issue, but until next time, keep diving deep.
And remember, the best discoveries are often found where you least expect them.